Well, hey, I am recording my Audible book, and I just thought it'd be kind of interesting for you to see how this works. Um, so it's going to be jiggling around here a little bit, but I want to show you my outfit here. And, or MacBook Air, excuse me. And there is my iPad, which I read off of. I used to read off a book, just right out of the book, right there. But I dropped it once, tore a page once. All this stuff was recorded, and I had to go back and edit it out. And the guy that was with me said, "Hey, why don't you just read it off your iPad?" Duh. So anyway, that's what I'm doing now. And I'm using, hold on a second. I'm using my, I was using GarageBand to record, but it's really not that user friendly. I wasn't really I recorded my first book with GarageBand, and then I finally found this app called Audacity, and Audacity has every single thing I want. So easy. Just go to preferences, and here they all are. Tracks, it talks about auto fit the track height and so on like that. Devices, I'm using a Yeti stereo microphone, which is right there. That's one thing I did spend a little money on there. That Yeti is an awesome microphone. So, and you put all that stuff in here, and then under quality, I'm recording at 44.1, 24-bit, medium quality, and track behaviors. You can set all that stuff. Import, export, and mix down to stereo or mono. All that stuff you set ahead of time, which makes it so much easier. And go ahead and hit OK on that. And then when I get back here, when I start recording, for example, let me go ahead and do this. Test 1, 2, 3, test 1, 2, 3. I'll go ahead and stop it, send back to the start, and play it. I just realized you're not going to be able to hear it play because it all goes through my headset. So anyway, and my wife's got these fancy Bose headsets, which are incredibly awesome, and that's what I record with those. And so all the systems all hooked together, and it's pretty amazing, really. So, but anyway, I'm going to go ahead and record one chapter in my audio book. Sorry about my throat. And we'll just go on from there. I just thought it might be interesting to you, to somebody anyway. So let me go ahead and get to my story. So I'm going to have to get rid of what I just recorded. So I'm going to go down here and delete that. And I'm going to set my audio track gain to -2 decibels. And I do that because I already know it. I had to do that when I uploaded it to ACX, and they said something about your gain's too high. So I just went back. I didn't re-record, which I used to do, which was stupid, but I didn't re-record. So what I did was I just went to what I already had and adjusted the gain. And once I get some audio on there, I can go to the limiter and go ahead and put the limiter on there too, and it just goes back and limits everything, redoes it. So let's see what I got to do here. I think I'm ready. So Chapter 13, Ruby-Doo. Once again, I was in the middle of a CRP field just off the end of the International Airport in Great Falls, Montana, joined by 40 to 50 of my NSTRA, National Shoot to Retrieve Field Trial Association, friends. I was there to compete with my bird dogs before I headed out for a week to 10 days of bird hunting on a Montana prairie. It was the end of August, and it was 92 degrees. Somehow, spending most of the long summer in Georgia, I missed the part about it being really hot in the heartland. In my parochial short-sighted vision, I think I assumed anything north would be cooler. Now, the background laughter is distracting. Heat was all the more penetrating because the sun was beating mercilessly on anything crazy, ignorant, or trusting enough to be outside in the shade. That included handlers, judges, dogs, field marshals, and spectators. Shade was sought and hoarded. Cold water was trading across the board for fizzy drinks. A cool breeze was heavenly. Wet heat, dry heat, it's all hot. Difference is the shade. In low humidity, when you're in the shade, if you stay calm and collected, it might even feel comfortable for a few minutes. Shade and breeze made life possible. Of the 5 dogs I carried with me, 2 were already NSTRA champions. Cap was a 3-time champion, drive-by points and placements, and Ruby a 2-time champion. Cap was retired from NSTRA. He had nothing to prove or gain by running more field trials. At 10.5 years old, he would be my top hunting dog for as long as he wanted to be. Ruby was even a little older than Cap by just a few months, but she needed 3 more points. You get 3 points for first place, 2 points for second, and 1 point for third. For her 3rd championship, she was healthy and running, and she was far and away the smartest dog I've ever owned. At least twice in the past, I saw her run straight to a spot she worked for a bird earlier but didn't produce it. Then she would point, and I would get the bird up. Both times were in the last few minutes of the brace. Both times, it was a bird that enabled us to advance to the next round. I thought she deserved another championship. One more championship would always also qualify her for another award when coupled with her 2 victories in the 2016 and 2019 Georgia Region NSTRA Championships. She was the only Brittany to ever win the trial, and she did it twice, at 7 and 9 years old. As we walked to the line, Ruby bounced around and pulled on the lead. With some dogs, I would insist on their walking at heel. It was a safety issue. They're big, strong dogs, and they could trip me up or cause me to slip on muddy ground. So I took a few days and added heel to the list of commands they know. But Ruby, at 34 pounds soaking wet, wasn't a problem. I always figured her antics were like a sumo wrestler banging his chest and psyching himself up for the contest. Ruby was excited. I let her get more excited. We were in the 15th brace out of 16 total braces for the day. Ruby had run a good run on the other field and was currently in 2nd place over there. I know 2nd place would not gain her enough points for her championship. I was hoping her 2nd would hold up, though, and I could maybe get a 3rd with her on this field. Then I'd have all the necessary points for her 3rd championship and her retirement. The dog that currently held 1st place did very good work earlier in the day. He had 4 finds and retrieves, good ground coverage, and obedience scores. I noticed he lacked a score for his back, most likely because he never had the opportunity since he found 4 of the 5 birds set out for his brace. At the line, Ruby steadied. I unsnapped her lead but held her collar. We both waited for the judge to tell us, "Turn him loose." The other dog and handler were to our left. The wind was right to left, coming out of the greater portion of the field. The command was given, and I let go of her collar. She shot out, full speed in a few strides, straight ahead, and then turned sharply to the right into the wind. I took a few steps, loaded my gun, stowed my lead, and started my watch, all the while watching Ruby. She went out about 100 yards and began a long, looping turn to the left, right back at me. I knew to walk slowly because she was now looking for the gallery bird. As she passed me and made another loop to the right, having swept the area off the start line in a figure 8 pattern, I felt confident at that point we hadn't left any behind. I learned to trust her nose. Of all my dogs, she's the one I most trust to use her head. I named her Ruby Doo, or Ruby number 2. My first Ruby was an English setter. Ruby Doo is fast and lean and long-legged. Once at 8 weeks old, after I picked her up in North Carolina the week before, I took her on a walk to the barn to meet the big dogs and started her awareness of the world around her. We sniffed the big dogs, and then, without saying a word, I walked out of the barn. and along a tree line to the creek about a third of a mile away. I glanced back and smiled as she noticed me missing, saw me, and sprinted towards me along my track. She passed me up, ran out about 20 to 30 feet in front, and started quartering left and right. Still not saying a word, I waited until she moved out a little farther. Then I stepped into the tree line and hid. Usually the pup will notice I'm gone and start to panic, and I'll magically reappear to save them. This teaches them, keep an eye on me and know where I am at all times. And it's not my job to tell you. That exercise reaps huge rewards later on when they're running a ridge line 300 yards out, and I see them glance over towards me. Or I won't see them, but they'll swing by 50 to 100 yards away, stop, check me out, take off again. Ruby, however, played the game a little differently. She turned, noticed I was nowhere to be found, whimpered once, reversed course, and took off full speed back up the trail. She went by me like an orange blur. I called to her, but she didn't even blink. All I saw was the tail end of an 8-week-old Brit pup, hauling her fuzzy butt back to the barn. I took off running, trying to catch her, but she was going away by the time I reached the barn. She ran right to the pen with the big dogs, grabbed some water from the bucket, and lay down. By the time I arrived, she was panting, but not too hard, and she was glad to see me. Her little stub tail was going a mile a minute. Ruby was a runner. I could only think it was the horseback breeding from her mom. She loved it. Later, she lived for the wide open stretches of grasslands. Her dad was Nolan's last bullet, 33-time NSTRA champion and multinational champion, and in the Hall of Fame, a master at the game of NSTRA. But her mom was a horseback trial bird dog, a big runner. After cleaning the field in front of the start line, Ruby took off again to the right into the wind. She swept back and forth, cleaning huge chunks of grass of any birds. 5 minutes went by, then 10. I was beginning to get concerned. We covered a good portion of the field and scored no birds on the card, and we only had 20 minutes left. Approaching the right boundary, I didn't need to say a thing to her. She hit the mowed strip and turned left to work the corner of the field. I thought perhaps she needed some water, so I raised my whistle and started walking to the flag indicating a water barrel in deep grass. Right then the judge yelled, "Point." I snapped my head around and smiled as I saw her 50 yards away, still as a statue. I flushed the chucker and shot it, and she retrieved it to my hand. I told her, "Good girl, get in, Ruby," my command to get to the water barrel nearby. I pointed the direction, and she headed that way until she saw the barrel and jumped in. She didn't stay long, only a few seconds. Energized, she took off, down the back boundary, breeze at her back. She worked back and forth with fast, full strides until we got to the very back corner. It was 20 minutes now into the brace. There were 10 minutes left on the clock. I could tell she was tiring in the heat. She slowed and looked at me as if to say, "Boss, I've done everything I can think of, and I'm not having any luck. You got any ideas?" Yes, I did. "Come on, girl," I said. I turned back into the wind and headed back diagonally across the field. On a different line now, one that crossed close to another water barrel. She passed by me, tongue out, slowing, but still game. "She's about out of gas," the judge commented. "Yeah, she is, Judge. She might have given me all she has today." "Point!" I shouted. Ruby spun around and pointed about 30 yards ahead. I moved as quickly as I could to her, scanning for the bird. Her back legs were shaking, but that nose was steady, eyes locked on a shrub not far off. She was eating scent, mouth slowly opening and closing. The bird was there and tried to escape by flushing behind me. I heard the wings, turned, and dropped the bird. Ruby was on it in a flash and dropped it into my hand. 5 minutes left in the brace. I looked towards the water barrel, back towards the gallery, and decided she needed water more than anything else. I whistled her back to me. She returned reluctantly, slowly, started back. "Point!" "Move," I thought to myself. The bird popped up and flew directly at the judge. "Safety," I yelled. The bird flew out of bounds. Ruby would get an average score for the retrieve, hindered by an unsafe situation. 3 birds on the card now, and 4 minutes left. Ruby, get in, girl. I pointed to the water barrel. It was important to make sure she was cool for the last few minutes. A very successful trialer told me one time, Randy, don't let her run out the clock. She's hot, can't smell anything. Make her get in the barrel and hold her there. Put water on her belly, her chest, and her head. Make sure she's soaked. Then let her finish out the run with a working nose and a strong stride. She jumped in the barrel. I put my gun down and wet her underside, head, and face. After 30 seconds, I sensed a renewed energy in her. Let's go, Rubes. She jumped out of the water barrel and immediately became Birdie. Point! I had only a minute or two left, so I moved quickly to the bird. I saw it running on the ground. It saw me and changed direction. Flush bird, Judge. You got it, he said. The bird took off right then, and I dropped it. Ruby was on it, slowly brought it to me and placed it in my hand. I knelt and stroked her head. I'm so proud of you, Ruby Doo. You've got all the grit a dog can have, I told her. We had 4 birds on the cart with only seconds left in the brace. So little time was left, I didn't even check my watch. I expected the judge to call time at any second. I stood to get my bearings and heard somebody say, point. It wasn't us, so I looked left, and there was my brace mate on point 40 yards away. Ruby, here, I yelled. She started to me, glanced past me, saw the other dog, and froze. Back, I shouted. You got it, Randy. It wasn't pretty, but it was a back. Time, he called. Laughing, I walked to Ruby and knelt beside her. Her scoring was over, so I pulled her to me. 4 finds, 4 retrieves, 1 a safety, and a back in 92-degree plus heat at 10 and a half years old. I took her head, I breathed in her nostrils, and tucked her under my chin. She let me catch her this time and sank into me. I'll never forget that short time we spent together in that open field. I was kneeling down, holding my dog. Ruby submitted and let me love on her. That dog has a lot of heart, Randy. I was proud to see her work. Good job, said the judge as he rode by. Ruby won the trial by 11 points. Her other fields standing did not hold up. She was 4th. Her win gave her the 3 points she needed for her 3rd championship. She's now retired from trialing and will concentrate entirely on bird hunting. With the occasional growling rollover of the new pup Blue from her last litter. Don't give me any lip, Junior. When you get 2 Georgia Region Championship wins, qualify as a future inductee in the Georgia NSTRA Hall of Fame, and 3 championships behind your name, I might listen. Until then, shut up and learn, kid. She'll say with an eye roll, that's my girl. Well, that's it. The magic of Audible recording.